Hi, it's CANDIA RAQUEL, founder of Centro de Poder. Welcome to the Sensual Sessions, the place to be to sense your fire and share your flame. Today we have a very special guest. This is Lise Brenner. Welcome, Lise.
Thank you.
So happy to have you here. And I was exploring your background and website and everything before this session. And I want to ask you, why were you teaching your first class when you were just 17 years old? Tell us, how was that moment?
Well, it was scary, and it felt completely natural. So I was filling in for my ballet teacher, Carolyn Gracie Greer, who was an amazing, amazing person, and a phenomenal teacher. One of those teachers who ended up, a New York wonderful woman. Anyway, she got sick, and she said to me, "I need someone to teach. And can you teach the ladies class at 10? And can you teach the advanced, sort of the upper class of teenagers at, I think it was at 3:30. And I was like, okay, I can.
Yeah.
So that's how that happened. Yeah.
And was that a beginning of something?
Yes.
What changed and what happened afterwards?
I mean, actually, I always was interested. I mean, my parents are both teachers, and my sister also was a teacher. And I was always interested in how teachers taught. And I was always very aware of how I felt in a class. I started ballet late. I was about 11 or 12, I guess, when I started taking ballet lessons. But my very first dance teacher when I was 6 was an amazing woman named Martha Nishitani from Seattle, who taught a kind of Humphrey Weidman improvisation. She had been incarcerated in the camps, the internment camps, and came back from that still determined to do what she'd wanted to do since a child, which was bring modern dance to Seattle. And you have to understand, Seattle pre-World War II was a very small and very provincial place. Yes. And it stayed pretty small and provincial for a long time. And so she was really she was a messenger, Yes. And her whole way of teaching was how we made circles, we made squares, it was completely oriented through how you felt. The form was secondary. She was interested in our bodies moving. And I'm so grateful that she was my first teacher, because I looked for that without knowing that's what I was looking for. I looked for that in every teacher after that. And because after that, I was just determined to be a ballerina, I ended up with a lot of that ballet training. It's pretty common. I had a lot of ex-city ballet people. I had a lot of ballet Russe people. I mean, it wasn't about movement. It was about how high you got your leg. So I'm so glad I had that underlying sense of, what I'm looking for is the movement through my body. Yes. Not, I knew the form would come if I understood how the flow would happen through my body. And she gave me that.
Yeah. The form as an outcome of the source.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So that's how I always taught. I mean, of course, I wasn't that smart at 17. I also was trying to make these people do it right in a much more sort of old-fashioned way. But underneath it, I had a sense of, no, it has to be movement and it has to be enjoyable. Yes. And, that's not always so common in a ballet class.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's all about appearance, yeah. But appearance. The good ballet dancers are having an ecstatic experience on the tip of their toes. The good ones. And that's how I believe technique should be sourced. And it made me also think on how sensuality, like culturally in our modern society and Vogue, is so fetishized, through the forms, like, oh, get this sensual lingerie so you're sensual, or get these nails and eyelashes so you're sensual. And that's just the form. And I mean, there are ladies and guys who rock lingerie and the nails and everything because those forms amplify a source and expression. But otherwise, it's just the appearance. Like, what you gonna do when you take the lingerie off? The sensuality is gonna go away.
I had a really interesting conversation a couple of weeks ago because I was buying some new bras here in Amsterdam, and there was this great shop across the street from where I was having coffee, and so I went, let me check it out. Really beautiful, simple things, So I went in, and she really helped. And then afterwards, we were talking, and I did pole dancing for a while in New York. After I stopped doing ballet and teaching and all those kinds of things, I've had a very complicated career. But when I was in my, I must have been about 56 or 57 when I started taking pole dancing. And it was so interesting to me, and this is what I told this woman in the lingerie shop, because there were so many women who did exactly that. They were like, okay, I'm taking pole dancing. That means I have to wear bright red lace or black lace or a corset, or I have, and you could tell immediately who was just inhabiting their body, and then it would be overwhelming to watch them, and who was posing, right? And it didn't matter how good their tricks were. I mean, it's like, I don't give a shit about the tricks, It's like, are you in that body or not? And this lingerie shop owner said, listen, I see this every day. I see people come in, they have an idea about what's going to make them look sexy for like their wedding night or whatever it is. And so they go for it and they put it on. And she said, you can tell by how their body reacts to it, whether or not it really makes them feel sexy or not, or if they're just putting on the costume they think they should be wearing. Exactly. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah. Don't wear sensuality as a costume because it's not a costume and won't make the trick. So
exactly.
How to do the trick then? What will do the trick? What will source you to the well of sensuality?
Well, I mean, what you contacted me originally about one of my later teachers, Nancy Top.
Yeah.
And I would say, who was such an amazing, God, what a resource that woman was, and she died really young. I think she was about 58 when she died, in the plane crash, that Swiss Air plane crash. It was really shocking. But to go back to the subject, what she gave me was, and I found it so interesting. We used to talk a lot about technique, right? Because she started off as a Cunningham dancer. She really wanted to be in the Cunningham company, and for some reason he didn't want her, which I don't understand. But anyway, she danced with Viola Farber. She was an amazing dancer. But because she didn't she wasn't like doing her dream traditional thing. She was open to exploration, and which is always so interesting, right? I mean, like how that works. So I'm not sure when, I don't know exactly the time period, but I know that by like the very early 70s, around 71, she was working with a friend of hers and doing a lot of research into what she ended up calling dynamic anatomy. And when I was studying with her and in her certification program, I was teaching ballet, I was performing a lot, I was choreographing, and I was working with highly technical dancers as I choreographed, but I was trying to deconstruct my own assumptions about movement, right? And it was really hard for me to do. And so Nancy's work, which was all based on, it was really like a 2.5 hour meditation is what it was. You started off with, it was at least an hour on the floor. And I would say 45 minutes just doing the initial kind of circular head things and ribs, and because it was all about dropping yourself down into the reality of your bones, right? Your bones, and how could you work with your own weight against the weight of the gravity of the floor so that you could lengthen and so that you could really drop into, I mean, it was really kind of an altered state of being present inside your own. Like, I remember just realizing for the first time in my life, oh my God, I have an inside to my rib cage. Isn't that fascinating? And how can I move from there? So, you know, it was such amazing work. And she worked with so many images. You know, you were always working with images and the movement, and her languaging was so precise, you know. And we would do these weekend workshops. If you were in the certification program, you had to do all of them. I think there must have been 12. And I remember there was one whole Saturday we just spent on the wrists and fingers, and how, and really getting into how they actually move, not how you think they move, but what's actually how, and what are you thinking about how they move, and what are you feeling? And I mean, I'm not doing it justice. It was an amazing exploration of what actually happens in your body. And she was super, super focused on the psoas and on the iliopsoas, which were things I'd sort of heard. I mean, I had amazing teachers in New York City. I studied for many, many years with Alfredo Corbino and his daughters, Andra and Ernesta. And I also taught for them. And I mean, Alfredo is one of, you could do a whole, I want to write a book about him just because I think he's one of the most brilliant men I've ever, and what a sweet, dear, wonderful person. But I mean, he was teaching ballet very much out of the Yost tradition, because he had been a ballet dancer. I shouldn't go into all this, but anyway, so he was teaching very much from gravity, right? So his way of teaching, while it was completely and impeccably, I would say, late 19th century, you know, it was really the kind of training that produced Karsavina and Pavlova and those people. I came to him later, and I came to him without having really had any deep understanding of anatomy. I came to him having started ballet late and then put into like 6-year classes after 6 weeks of ballet. So I was constantly trying to do what I saw people doing around me without really understanding. So by the time I got to Alfredo, my nervous system was already busy with trying to do it right. And he was trying to get me to feel it, and I couldn't. But with Nancy, I had time, and I didn't have to do a pirouette. I just had to feel my sit bones connected to the floor, and which was radical. I mean, that was such a radical experience. And yeah, it totally changed my life. It changed my dancing, and it changed my teaching, and it changed my choreography, because all of a sudden I was able to know for myself what it felt like to do technique from the inside out. It was like I suddenly understood that ballet really was built on the human body, yes. Right? And then when I was teaching, I could give corrections that would help people to understand that. So I had these two incredible three. I had Martha from the beginning. I had Carolyn Gracie Greer's musicality. She was amazing. I had Alfredo's incredible body of technique, you know, in this highly classical way. And then I had Nancy, you know, who gave me permission to feel my own body, gave me the information I needed. And then really the last 45 minutes of the class was always improvisation. And it was usually on a very specific theme. And it was also about, well, if this is doing that, then that is doing, you know, the kind of questions and answers that Feldenkrais uses a lot. So it was just like putting all of this incredible material into action. And it allowed me, as a choreographer, it allowed me to not make up steps, but to say, oh, I think that this particular color I want to paint with on the stage has this physical quality, and I think I'm doing it from this place. And then to experiment with my phenomenally open dancers and who were highly technical. So it was an interesting thing of getting them out of their assumptions about what they should do and into their bodies. And then we would come up with these beautiful improvisations, and then we'd have the huge problem of trying to turn them into something that they could replicate with the same sense of weight and surprise and timing, but do the same thing time after time after time. So that was a super long answer. I'm sorry, but
No, that was a foundational answer for what's coming. So I discovered Nancy through Laura Rios here in Mexico, and that's why my functional skeleton has a pink psoas. So it's very,
I love it.
right in the core of the body, and it's there like silently, a skeleton hanging there in the corner. And after like a few months of teaching, like I bring it up, like, have you noticed the skeleton? Yeah, of course. Have you noticed it has something pink? And yeah, looks nice. And then we introduce the idea of the psoas. So in this way, at least for me in my teaching, it takes like a few context of form as a container to then go to the well of technique, and then spring and source like the experience from there. And it's very important what you mentioned that Nancy Topf provided you, that was first of all time, like enough freedom to move yourself away from the shoots and must and the pressure of replicating a form the right way as other dancers. So with this time came the permission to sense and feel, and the information. And this is so valuable, not only for ballet dancers or for movers, but for life. Like at least give yourself the time, the permission, and the information. Because if you don't have the time, the permission, and the information from yourself available, how are you gonna do what you want to do? How are you gonna know how to do it? So in regards to sensuality, how tremendous is to think of sensuality not as wearing a lingerie, putting something on, but like going through this journey of time, permission, and information.
Yeah.
So how do you see sensuality there in Amsterdam? How is it perceived? Or maybe it is perceived by its absence.
Sometimes I think it's perceived by its absence, actually. Yeah, I mean, this is such a cliche, right? But I have spent a couple months in Italy recently, and just the way Italian waiters are about food, like Italian waiters want to go on this little journey with you about what you're eating, right? They're like, if you are saying, I want something specific, they're thrilled, they're just like, oh yes. And then you need this wine, and then you need this, and it's this whole like thing. And you don't rush, you're there. And no matter how busy and crowded the restaurant is, it's a whole thing. In Holland, first of all, the service is terrible. It's so awful. There's no sense of that this is a shared sort of adventure around taste, right? There's none of that at all.
No, boiled potatoes. Beautiful.
I mean, the food's gotten a little better than it was when I first lived here for the first time, 20 years ago. But the attitude is not that different. It's functional. It's like food is functional, and in Italy, it's just such an enjoyment of the moment.
Yes.
So yeah, I think there's that. But I also think that there's a difference between pretty much everywhere I've been in Europe. and the United States in terms of a sense of how, like, the daily life, like meeting a friend for coffee, which is such a common thing all over Europe, you know, and there's cafes everywhere, and even countries like Germany, or, you know, places you don't necessarily think of as cafe culture, they have cafe culture. I mean, this is just part of life that you will enjoy. You will sit down with a friend, that work will end at 5 or 5:30, and then you're going to enjoy, no matter what the weather is. In the US, we have none of this. We are so focused on, well, actually, I think at this point, we're, as a country, the country is pretty much in a state of constant stress and terror. But you know, the fact is that people are busy in a way. They're both busy, and they think they should be busy in a way that doesn't allow for much sensuality.
Yes.
You really have to decide that you're going to go looking for that. And one of the reasons I'm very clear on this is because I did some work with, I did a course with this woman who calls Mama Gina School of Womanly Arts. Have you heard of Mama Gina?
Yeah, I've heard of her. Yeah.
So the thing about her is she, you know, her whole thing is, what's pleasure? What are you doing? You know, how have you been trained as a woman living in the patriarchy? How have you been trained out of having pleasure? How can you find it again? Yes. Where is it in your life? You know, and when I encountered her, I had stopped dancing. I was spending most of my time living in Seattle, selling my family house because my father died suddenly. My mother had Alzheimer's. I was taking care of my mother. I mean, it was
hard.
I was going into menopause. My body felt terrible. It was awful. There was no pleasure or joy anywhere that I could see. And a friend of mine in New York said, "Come with me to Miami." I'm like, "Miami? I don't want to go to Miami." And she's like, "No, come with me. we're going to be on the beach, and we're going to do this free weekend with this woman, Mama Gina." And I'm like, anything to get out of Seattle. So I went, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm dancing again," you know, because she does a lot of dancing. And I was just like dancing, you know, and walking on the beach barefoot, and not having to worry about my mother, and not having to, you know, like, and I thought, you know what?
Yeah.
I need to pursue this, because otherwise I'm going to lose my life entirely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because sensuality is not just the lingerie. It's the expression of aliveness, the expression of being healthy in your body, alive and involved in reality creatively. And I think we should take care of that, and we should take it back, because it's our birthright. Pleasure is our birthright. So important.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And so interesting to see how also in Mexico we are busy, but we are busy on an inefficient and on an unavailable way, because I mean, Europeans are highly productive and highly efficient people, and very goal oriented and sharp, and it's interesting to examine being busy and the mentality of busyness, and it's not more productive, but on the contrary, it's detrimental. And on the other hand, the service of the waiters in Holland, it's like more functional now, like transactional. And in these three contexts of Italy and the functionality of Amsterdam and the busyness of the States, the main difference I perceive it's the how you do what you do, how you get your point across, do your everyday activities, live your life. So in regards to that, I would like you to share with us a little exercise, taste of, or experience or something to connect to our sensuality in our daily life, like serving a dish if you're a waiter, or going to work, or like be sensual no matter your busyness or your agenda. How can you like dance from the sauce even if you're dancing a hectic, very speedy choreography?
Well, that's interesting. So I also have been a meditator for now about 25 years, and I'm certified to teach a certain kind of practice. And I've made that my own. And one of the things that I love to do is to ask people to close their eyes and put both hands on their heart, flat, so one hand rests on the other. And so as you do that, just let the weight of your hands really sink into your front ribs there, or the, whatever that is, the sternum. Just take a deep breath in and let it out. And now feel your feet on the floor. It's always good to feel your feet on the floor. And then feel your sit bones on the chair or the cushion or whatever it is you're sitting on. And just breathe and feel your hands rising and falling. And if you hear any sounds, just open your ears to the sounds. They're there, like your breath, like your hands, like the floor, like battery, or not battery, like, gravity. Just letting all that reality happen around you. And see if you can feel like you're sinking your eyes all the way down into your heart behind your hands. And just rest there for a moment. And just letting yourself take a nice breath in and slowly opening your eyes and dropping your hands.
I'm home.
Yeah. Yeah, it brings you home very fast.
Yeah. Very effective. Thank you so much, Lise.
You're welcome.
Would you describe in 3 words what you're sensing in this moment?
I'm sensing gravity, actually. I'm sensing how supported I am by the earth. I'm having some delight because there's some bird that's just talking and talking and talking in the tree. And I'm enjoying the warmth on my skin because it's that rare thing in Amsterdam. It's a very warm day.
Oh, great. Where can we know more about your doings and your work? How can we contact you?
Well, I have a website that's a bit in process, but it is going to be my central website, and it's just my name. It's LiseBrenner.com. And I'm going to link the Lise Brenner creative website to that eventually. And I'm launching a new business as a writing consultant. And I'm using these kinds of practices and a sense of improvisatory freedom as a way to help people with all kinds of writing projects. I've been doing this for many years, but I'm putting it together into real programs. So LiseBrenner.com is where you can find out about everything.
Go to lisebrenner.com and contact Lise Brenner. Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure talking to you and enjoying this experience of the heart and getting a sense of your trajectory too. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. It's been wonderful talking to you. I hope we can talk more in the future.
Yeah, do more things together. So for the
That'd be lovely.
audience, you know where to find Lise. And if you don't know where to find the Essential Sessions, go to centraldepodere.com and make sure to subscribe to the Essential emails to get every episode delivered to your email weekly. And this is for now. Catch you next time. And remember to take the time to sense your fire so you can share the flame.